Okay, so you guys have sent in a ton of stuff about this Aimee Semple McPherson. And honestly, what a life, right? I mean,
Yeah.
picture it, the roaring 20s, flappers, jazz, and right in the thick of it all, this woman builds a megachurch from nothing, basically,
Wait.
becomes like this huge media star, and then poof, gone,
Just vanishes.
vanishes,
Yeah.
only to come back with a story so wild to be trending everywhere today.
Oh, absolutely.
So we're going to dive deep into all the sources you've sent us, and well, let's see what made Sister Aimee so captivating and, yeah, so controversial.
Yeah, even now, almost 100 years later, there's this pull, like her life just speaks to us about faith, about fame, and, well, there's still this mystery hanging over it all.
Okay, so start with the basics, right? Aimee Semple McPherson, born Aimee Elizabeth Kennedy back in 1890 in Ontario, Canada. And even as a girl, she was like a little rebellious.
Oh, yeah, she was always questioning things.
Like,
Well, her parents were Methodist, and she pushed back on that. Even challenged the whole theory of evolution they were teaching in school, which back then was pretty daring, especially for a young woman.
so already kind of a rule breaker, huh?
Yeah.
Then at 17, she marries Robert Semple, this Irish Pentecostal missionary. And get this, they decide to head to China to spread the gospel.
Wow, talk about ambitious.
I know, right?
And it's important to remember that back then, Pentecostalism was pretty new, a very vibrant, kind of energetic branch of Christianity. They believed in, like, a direct experience with God, divine healing, speaking in tongues, that kind of thing. Very different from the more traditional churches.
So they weren't just spreading any Christianity, but this very specific, more experiential kind.
Exactly.
And then tragedy strikes in Hong Kong,
Yeah, Robert dies of malaria.
leaving Aimee, a widow, and pregnant, alone in a foreign country.
Can you imagine?
That's heartbreaking. But she's resilient, comes back to the U.S., settles in New York City, and ends up joining the Salvation Army with her mom.
So even after all that religious upbringing still held strong.
It did.
But here's where things get interesting. She remarries, this time to Harold McPherson, but that pull toward ministry never really goes away.
Like a constant tug of war between a normal life and this calling.
Exactly. And then she gets really sick, almost dies. Later, she described it as this pivotal moment, like hearing God directly asking her, "Will you go?"
Wow, that's intense.
It was, and that's when she fully embraces her calling,
Yeah.
eventually leaving Harold behind.
So she strikes out on her own, starts traveling, holding these tent revivals, preaching this message of hope and positivity.
And people loved it.
What set her apart, though? I mean, there were tons of preachers back then.
Well, her style was different, less fire and brimstone. She focused on Jesus' love and acceptance. Her message was uplifting, especially for folks who felt like outsiders.
Kind of like a spiritual safe space.
Yeah, I think so.
And that explains why she got such a devoted following so quickly.
It does. And, Aimee was smart to reach more people. She starts this magazine, The Bridal Call. Way before social media, it was a brilliant way to connect with her followers.
She was definitely an entrepreneur.
Oh, totally.
And it doesn't stop there. In 1923, she finishes the Angelus Temple in Los Angeles. This massive 5,300-seat megachurch becomes the home base of her Foursquare church.
It's incredible, really, especially for that time. Think about it. Women weren't exactly encouraged to be leaders back then.
No, they weren't. So tell me about this Foursquare church.
Well, the name comes from the Foursquare Gospel. It emphasizes these four aspects of Jesus: Savior, Healer, Baptizer, and Coming King.
Okay, I'm following.
It resonated with people, They wanted a powerful, all-encompassing religious experience.
So she wasn't just building a church, but a whole movement.
You got it. And hold on, it gets even better. She was one of the first women to preach on the radio. Even got a broadcasting license.
Wow, talk about a pioneer. She was way ahead of her time.
She was-
But this is where things take a turn, right? 1926, she's at the peak of her fame. And then, while swimming at a California beach, she disappears.
Yeah, just like that. Vanished. The whole country was glued to the story. The Coast Guard, they launched this massive search. Divers, boats. They even tried using dynamite to, maybe find her body. The media went crazy. It was like nothing anyone had seen before.
Well, yeah, I can see why. I mean, here's this woman, this dynamic preacher, the top of her game, and then boom, she's just gone.
It's true.
Like something out of a movie, right?
Totally.
So what were people saying?
Oh, all sorts of things. Secret affairs. Maybe she ran off to escape some trouble. Some even thought she got plastic surgery and was living a new life, with a new face.
It must have been a whirlwind of rumors. So did they ever find anything, any clue at all?
Well, just when everyone was losing hope, they were even planning a memorial service. Aimee reappears
Wait, why?
Yeah, she comes back out of the blue after 5 weeks, says she was in the Mexican desert.
Hold on. So after weeks of nothing, she just shows up.
Yep.
And I'm guessing this is where the story gets even wilder.
You could say that. Aimee claims she'd been kidnapped, drugged, held captive in this shack out in the desert, even described this dramatic escape, walking like 20 miles through the desert to get back.
Okay, but after all that searching, and then she just pops back up.
With this story that sounds, I don't know, kind of far-fetched, I mean, I'd be skeptical too.
Oh, many people were. Her clothes were too clean for someone who'd been through all that. And despite looking, no one ever found this shack or any sign of the kidnappers.
So did people believe her?
It was really divided. Some of her followers, they never wavered. They believed her completely. Others, they saw it as a hoax, maybe the publicity stunt gone wrong, or a way to cover up something else.
It feels like that whole kidnapping thing really overshadowed everything else she did.
Yeah, it definitely became this, defining moment in her life, cast a shadow over everything.
So what happened next?
Well, they convened a grand jury to investigate, to see if it was all made up, But they never had enough evidence, so the charges were dropped. Officially, the kidnapping of Aimee Semple McPherson remains unsolved.
Wow, so the mystery continues. But we can't forget, she built an empire, a whole movement. And she kept leading her church, even after all that drama.
That's right.
So what happened with her life after the kidnapping?
Well, her ministry continued, and she really focused on helping people, especially during the Depression.
So, social work.
Yeah, she had this thing called the Angelus Temple Commissary. They provided food for over 1.5 million people during those tough times.
That's incredible.
It was.
She really walked the walk, huh? Helping people no matter who they were, what they believed.
She did.
It's a different side of her than the one we usually hear about.
It is. But even with all the good she did, there was still conflict and more scandal.
Oh no, so it didn't end with the kidnapping.
Nope. There were fights within the Angelus Temple, disagreements with her own mother. Even the choir walked out at one point.
Sounds stressful.
It was. And then there was her personal life.
Huh.
Her third marriage, this time to David Hutton, an actor, much younger than her, caused a lot of gossip within the church. And well, it ended in a very public, very messy divorce.
Another marriage, another divorce, and another wave of bad press.
Pretty much.
With all this happening,
Yeah.
I wonder if she ever found any peace.
It makes you think, right? Aimee's life, it was this whirlwind, triumphs, controversies, all mixed together. She was complicated, hard to put into a box. She did amazing things, touched millions of lives. But those scandals, those personal struggles, they never really went away.
Why do we focus on the bad stuff, even when someone does so much good? Are we just drawn to the drama?
Maybe, but I think it's also because we want people to be simple, good or bad. But Aimee's story shows us it's never that easy. People are complex. We all have flaws.
Yeah, even those who preach about virtue,
Exactly.
no one's perfect.
And maybe those who try to be great, they're just under a bigger microscope.
Yeah, it's a reminder to be a little kinder, I guess. But even with all the ups and downs, Aimee Semple McPherson really left her mark. I mean, her Foursquare church, it's still going strong today. Millions of members all over the world.
And that says a lot, right? It shows how powerful her message was, how much it resonated with people, that need for connection, for something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, she really tapped into that.
She did. And she was brilliant with how she used media, the radio, her magazine. She was reaching more people than most religious leaders back then.
A true innovator. And it makes you wonder, that whole kidnapping thing, whether it was real or not, it definitely kept her in the spotlight. Maybe that mystery even added to her appeal,
Oh, absolutely. All those unanswered questions, the speculation, it created this whole narrative that people were drawn to. Even if they doubted her story, they couldn't deny her charisma, the impact she had.
It's like sometimes the story we tell is just as powerful as what actually happened. And her story, it's one we're still talking about today. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Sister Aimee, what stands out to you? What's her biggest legacy?
I think it's got to be her courage. She was a trailblazer, especially for women in ministry, built this religious empire, embraced new technology. She defied expectations.
Yeah, she paved the way for so many others. And that impact is still felt today.
It is.
But we got to acknowledge the other side too, right? The controversies, the scandals, those unanswered questions.
Of course. It's all part of who she was.
It reminds us that history isn't simple.
Nope.
People are complicated.
Exactly. We're all a mix of good and bad, light and shadow.
And that's what makes studying these figures so interesting.
It is. They make us think. They make us challenge our assumptions.
Well, I think it's safe to say Aimee Semple McPherson was one of a kind, a powerful leader, a gifted communicator, a master of her own image.
And a woman who lived life on her own terms.
She left a complicated legacy, that's for sure. But it's one that continues to fascinate us.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's the mark of a truly impactful life. So we hope this deep dive has given you a new perspective on Sister Aimee. We encourage you to keep learning, keep exploring, and decide for yourself what to make of this incredible woman.
Remember, history isn't just about dates and facts. It's about people in all their messy, complicated glory.
And on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another fascinating story from the past.